Hey, I get it, standing on a ridge with a pair of binoculars that just can't pull you in far enough, or pulling out a cheap spotting scope and ending up with a blurry mess, is frustrating. You've probably thought about stepping up to something that actually lets you see that hawk's talons, or a distant elk's antlers without squinting, but the worry about blowing your budget on the wrong gear keeps you hesitating. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through why the Leupold SX4 Pro Guide HD Gen 2 2060x85mm angled spotting scope might be the sweet spot for you, or why you might want to keep scrolling. First off, the biggest question I hear from anyone eyeing a high magnification scope is, will I actually use the top end of that zoom? The SX4 Pro gives you a 20 to 60 range, which on paper looks like overkill for a weekend trek. In practice, that range works out nicely for a few concrete scenarios. If you're a birdwatcher who spends mornings in a forest clearing, the lower 20-30 range lets you spot a warbler hopping through the understory without having to hunt for a perfect stance. When you're hunting and you've got a clear line of sight on a ridge, cranking up to 5060 can bring a distant elk's silhouette into view just enough to make that ethical shot decision. And for anyone dabbling in astronomy, the 60 power can actually resolve Saturn's rings on a clear night, though you'll need a sturdy tripod to keep the image steady. The angled eyepiece is another practical detail that people often overlook until they are in the field. Traditional straight eyepieces force you to tilt your head up or down, which gets awkward when you're looking over a fence or down a slope. The SX4's 45-degree angled design means you can keep your head level, which reduces neck strain during long observation sessions. I tried it on a steep hilltop, and the difference was immediate. I could track a soaring red-tailed hawk without constantly readjusting my posture. Now, let's talk about what you actually get when you pull this thing out of its case. Leupold's HD, high-definition, glass is a step up from regular optics. In daylight, colors are surprisingly true, greens stay green, and the contrast on a distant pine tree's bark stays crisp. When I positioned the scope about 150 yards from a moose standing in a clearing, the texture on its fur was distinguishable, and I could see the subtle shift in its eye direction details that would be lost with low-quality lenses. That clarity is where the value really starts to shine, especially if you're making decisions that rely on precise visual cues. But there are trade-offs, and they matter. The scope weighs just over 8 pounds, and its 85mm objective lens makes the tube fairly bulky. Hand-holding at 60 is practically impossible. Any slight tremor turns the image into a jittery mess. This isn't a deal-breaker if you already own a solid tripod, but if you were hoping to toss it in a backpack for a quick hike, you'll need to budget for a decent, vibration-dampening mount. The size also means it doesn't slip into a standard day pack. Most users end up buying a dedicated spotting scope case, which adds to the overall cost. Speaking of cost, the SX4 Pro sits in the higher-end bracket of spotting scopes. The price reflects the combination of high magnification range, HD optics, and the angled eyepiece. If you're on a shoestring budget, or you only need occasional, low-magnification viewing, you'll probably get more bang for your buck with a 20-30 scope that's lighter and cheaper. The value of the SX4 comes from those moments when you truly need that extra reach and the optical fidelity to make it useful. Think serious wildlife photography, long-range hunting, or detailed nature study. If those scenarios are rare for you, you might be paying for features you'll rarely tap. Another practical consideration is eye relief and the ability to use the scope with glasses. The SX4 offers about 20mm of eye relief, which is comfortable for most users, and the angled eyepiece helps you maintain that distance without crowding your glasses. In my tests, even with thick reading glasses on, I could get a full field of view without vignetting, which is something you often lose on cheaper scopes that have narrower eyebox designs. Weather resistance is a point that often gets glossed over in marketing copy, but it matters when you're out in the rain or early morning frost. The scope's body is machined from a single piece of aluminum, and the lens caps seal tightly, giving it a decent level of water resistance. I took it out after a light drizzle, and the internal optics stayed clear, no fogging or condensation appeared, which suggests the sealing is effective. However, it isn't rated for submersion, so you still need to protect it from heavy downpours or splashing water. So, who should walk away from this review with the SX?